Hey, Roma, do you want to learn a lot about Batman and Catwoman and their 70-year relationship?
Absolutely. I am super, what's the word I'm looking for? I love ships. I love simping over couples. I'm here for it. Let's do it.
This is the ultimate ship, I think.
The ultimate. Wait, is it just Batman?
Well, I mean, we'll talk about other ultimate ships, but this is my ultimate ship.
Batcat. Wait, would their ship name be Catbat or Batcat?
It's Batcat.
It's Batcat. I love it.
Perfect, my love. Let's go home.
Our new cat burglar's a woman.
Probably my imagination.
Probably not.
Magnificent.
I suggest you save the flattery for the judge.
So long, Dark Knight.
Drop in anytime.
You're too kind.
Hello, and welcome to the Hyperfixation, where my friends come onto my show and tell me about things that excite them for 30 to 45 minutes or more, depending on the vibes. My name is Roma. I use the they and them pronouns. I'm joined today by Jesse.
Hi, I'm Jesse, and I use the he, him pronouns.
First of all, happy Valentine's Day. As of recording, it is not Valentine's Day, but this episode will be coming out the day after Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day. I don't know how to transition from that.
Well, I mean, you reached out to me. You're like, hey, you wanna do your hyper fixation episode? Because we talked about it when you came on to my show.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, totally. And you're like, it'll be the day after Valentine's Day. I'm like, okay, cool. We're talking about Batman and Catwoman.
Hell yeah. Oh man, that was like last year.
That was last year, yeah.
I mean, it's only beginning of February, but yeah, last year when I started the pod, I met you through the Moonshot Discord, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. And so then from there, it's just like we're interacted on the Twitters. And then you gave me the opportunity to just absolutely freaking info dump and talk about Chainsaw Man, which I could do every day, any time of the day. But of course, definitely was like, obviously, I need you on my show. You know so much about comics, and I know absolutely nothing about comics. I read manga. But I needed to know. I needed the information, and this ended up perfect, I think, in my opinion. So, when did comics become a thing for you? Because I know a lot of people, it's their childhood, or like somebody got them into it. But what does that story look like for you?
So it's weird for me in that sense because. I mean, this would be a nice established thing. I just turned 29, so I've been around for a little bit.
Happy
at least.
Birthday.
Thank you. And so my parents like to say my first three words were mom, dad, and Batman. There was something about at least Batman that as just a baby, a little baby, my mind just kind of attached to. I want to say that the movie Batman Forever came out in 90. It was either the year I was born, 94, but it was summer, or it was 95. I think it was 95 though, but it was a summer release either way. And my parents just took me as a baby. And I don't think I had any feigning interest in the character as a little baby that couldn't speak, but they took me anyways. And so that was my first movie that I ever saw in theaters, was a Batman movie because I was a baby. And so that kind of was always lingering, Batman was. But then expanding into the rest of comic books, my parents, before I was born, especially my dad, were just really big into that stuff already.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they had a pretty decent sized comic book collection that they had to sell at some point because they had to support 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of was always there. And then we were big thrift store people. So my dad would always... Yeah, my dad always take us to thrift stores, and there would always be just dollar comics there, and I'd be like, "Can I pick up 5 of these?" And so, as a kid growing up, that's one of the ways I learned how to read, was reading through comics. And then around 12 is when my dad actually took me to a comic book store and let me pick out books that I would get monthly. And I think my first one was Ultimate Spider-Man.
Aww.
Yeah, because I was going around there, and as much as Batman is my favorite. I think as a kid, I really was attached to Spider-Man 2 for a long time.
Mm-hmm. That's you sent me into a nostalgic hole because my parents were also big nerds growing up, and I wasn't super attached to like anything but cats. I was definitely a little cat kid, but my dad would go to this bookstore that had a huge comic book section in the back. So my dad would read Star Trek and Star Wars novels all the time. He watched Star Trek all the time. That was what we did. But when he was going to the bookstore to return the books that he borrowed and get new ones, I would immediately run to the back of the store to the comic section, and I would just look at the art. Because with ADHD, it was very hard for me to like read and sit down and like read something, but I sure as hell liked looking at the pictures. So you telling me about your dollar comic book pickups reminded me of me just staring into this empty comic book section with cardboard cutouts and piles and piles of comic books in little plastic sleeves. So it's just, I can smell it now.
Yeah, and like I talked about this, I think, with Marn when they came on to Y Comics 2. Is like I was a big library kid too, where I would go into there and max out my like I didn't have a credit card, but I had a library card that I would max out like every time I go to the library. And the library itself just had a wall of graphic novels and stuff. So I would just go back there, probably too young to read a lot of those, and like pick them up and be like, I'm reading all of these, please. And they would just stare at me and it's like, these are for like teenagers. You're not supposed to.
You sure, kid?
And then as like, I don't know if there's something just like mentally in me that likes this, but as like a collector of comics in general, like my interests have widened since I was a kid. There's something about the plastic bags and boards and like the old paper of the older books and stuff, and getting those all organized, and like I zen out just doing that from time to time.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I'm going into like I'm back in the nostalgic hole. It's just kind of surreal because like you were able to sit there and ingest the stories and really enjoy them, but I feel like I'm kind of looking through like a glass, like I'm staring out, like I understand, but I don't actually know what anything that was going on in those comic books. So I'm really excited to learn today about like the history between at least Batman and Catwoman, maybe more. So aside from your childhood, has in your adulthood now, like what kind of content, like comic book content, are you getting into these days? Is it, I mean, probably still Batman, obviously, but like what is the major exciting storylines going for you right now?
So for me, like I'm a pretty easy mark when it comes to like cape books, like Marvel, DC stuff, right? Like as much as people like to complain about the nostalgia factor on a lot of that stuff and kind of the simple storylines that a lot of these books have to deliver in a general sense, you can't always have your Grant Morrison stories or your Jonathan Hickman stories, which are really like complex and sciencey and really like intricate, because you're still trying to market at least these books to a general audience. So I just enjoy kind of like a feel good story most of the time when I'm reading those books, but I have noticed my buying has leaned heavily more independent too as time goes on, because it just has the freedom to tell diverse stories without the stranglehold of editorial that's kind of even above the comics industry. Because like with Marvel and with DC, you have them owned by DC now, currently owned by Discovery, and Marvel being owned by Disney. Like they like back in the day, like in 2015, which doesn't, I'm not, maybe not 2015, like 2013, which isn't that long ago, but like there's a whole storyline with Batwoman, who is a very queer, openly queer gay character, and the writers wanted her to get married to her current girlfriend, and the editorial's like, nah, we're not going to do that, and the writers just walked, because like that's a stranglehold on this character's growth and development. And so there's back and forth with that. So independent really gives you that freedom to tell these stories.
Absolutely.
Currently, though, I'm trying to think of like individual books that I'm like stoked about and I talk about a lot. There, especially like for this audience, is Something is Killing the Children, which is a current ongoing independent book from Boom Studios. The basic premise of it is the monsters that we have nightmares about as kids, right? Like, what if one of those gets really manifested in reality and attacks children? Like the monsters of like old horror movies, like mostly go after kids. What happens if one of those is real, and what's the society that goes after those monsters?
Yeah.
And they have like little partners that are the monsters that they had it when they were a kid, and put in stuffed animals, and that's how they can be able to detect these monsters and stuff. And it gets really complicated in that book. You learn really early on because adults can't see these things. So they think these hunters that come into this area to kill the monster are the people committing the mass murders of these children.
Oh no.
so things get pretty complicated, but I think it's a really like thoughtful story. There's a lot of perspectives in that story that are different. Another good one that just wrapped up recently is Once and Future King. Or actually, I messed up the name. It's just Once and Future. I think of Once and Future King because that's the full saying. But it's the premise of like King Arthur coming back today. But what if King Arthur was like, I just want pure blood England? And now these people have to be like, oh, we got to stop the zombie King Arthur. And there's a lot of Arthurian lore and a lot of just like old lore, like Beowulf's in it and stuff. It's really well done. And it's drawn by this artist named Dan Mora, who's like impeccable and clean lines and just brilliant. And like he works super fast because he was like doing that book and doing like 3 other books at the same time. It's kind of nuts.
That's nuts. I couldn't even imagine. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I was just like thinking about other comics I'm reading right now, but I'm trying to wrap my head around them.
Oh, I feel you. To go back on an earlier point you were talking about with the editors kind of choking out the artists and the writers from doing, the proper character progression they're supposed to be doing or wanting to do. I remember I don't know if you've heard of Overly Sarcastic Productions on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this, I think it was DC timelines or Marvel timelines. Either way, just like how they had to do a hard reset on the whole universe, I think twice. Is that correct? I can't remember. Like they had to implode everything.
Yeah, definitely both universes have had similar things. Marvel's whole thing is like they have these characters, and this is kind of often in a little bit of the weeds, but I like this. I really like talking about this stuff because it's fun to me to think about. Like characters like the Punisher and Captain America, their origins are so set in real life events. Like Cap is all about World War II, and Punisher comes from the Vietnam War and stuff like that. That they have to keep on shifting history slightly to make these characters stay the same age, but also be able to talk about current events. And Marvel did the wrong thing, which was create a new war. And the new war they created was kind of, and by kind of I mean pretty racist. So that's like kind of the wrong way to do it, I think, of that. But Marvel's characters are so intertwined with the reality of our world that I don't know the easier solution than that. I mean, you could have made it just less racist. You could have made it like us fighting Russia or something instead of a fake Vietnam. But
yeah.
But with DC, DC did hard reboots a few times, and their whole thing is they can never decide if they want to keep it or not.
Oh my gosh.
There's this thing in DC that you love or hate. It's really the flip of a coin with fans called hyper time. And the idea of hyper time is continuity matters if you need it to matter at that moment. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like you have to say all of Batman's history, all like 80 plus years of Batman's history happened within like 5 years if you're keeping him at a certain age. But that means Dick Grayson has to go from Robin to Nightwing. And then you have to get Jason Todd from Robin to Red Hood. And then Tim Drake has to be 13 to 16 or whatever. And then Damian has to age 10 years or 13 years now at least in 5 years. How does that work? So like the idea of it is like Batman's whatever age you need him to be. He can reference whatever story you need him to reference, and that's in canon at the time that you need to reference it. Some writers really go for that, some writers don't. But currently, I think the most fascinating thing about where the current state for at least DC is when it comes to continuity and stuff like that is they're aware of it. With the most recent kind of like not reset, but like reestablishing of the rules of the game, the whole universe was made aware that their timeline has been messed with and rebooted. So they're just aware of this now. And it's something that is kind of funky when the characters talk about it at times, where they're like, they don't call themselves comic book characters, but they do be like, they do think like, wow, we lost like 16 universes and then we gained them and then we lost them and then we gained them again. And people have been ripped out of their lives and put back in and then ripped out again. So there's some
stressful. My goodness.
Yeah. And there's certain characters that I like the runs where the writer's like, why don't we address this trauma? Like, because this is a real trauma that these characters have and no one talks about.
I did like in what was it? The witch, the Crimson Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, Scarlet Witch.
What was the movie or the TV show that came out on Disney Plus?
WandaVision?
WandaVision. I almost called it Marlavision. I liked when they kind of addressed that in WandaVision with like after the snap, you know, like you got a percentage of the population gone, and instead of just being like, oh, that's a thing that happened, it's just like this affected a lot of normal and super people, and that brings me a lot of joy. I mean, not that they're having that trauma, but that it's being acknowledged and it's part of the plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As we get to like the core of this romance that I want to talk about, the writer at that time really uses that in a really interesting way when it comes to like, what do you remember when you first meet each other? I don't know if we want to kind of just jump in it now then.
I think this is a good transition. I'm just going to start the timer here real quick. You can do your thing.
Okay. So I put some images that kind of get us started in the chat, where there's some interactions that I put like early on, because my hyperfixation kind of shifted from Batman to Superman for a bit now, where I'm reading all the old Superman books and stuff. And really early on, Lois is in there. Lois is like the only other really named character in the Superman books early on. And their relationship is kind of established between like Clark Kent is kind of a loser and he really looks up to Lois Lane, who is a star reporter, and she can't give him the time of day because he can't get his act together. But it is an act because he is Superman. He does have his act together. And I think at the time that was a pretty typical romance. Like it was an idea of the bumbling guy and the together girl, or vice versa, in a lot of rom-coms and stuff of like the 40s and things like that.
Oh man, the precursor of the ugly bastard.
Yeah, kind of.
Sorry.
And it's one of those things where like I think that's why, and we'll kind of get to it in a down the road, but like why would Superman and Lois Lane get married and then they retcon that? It really shattered a lot of people and it really sent a weird vibe in DC. And then they're like, what if Superman and Wonder Woman slept together? And everybody's like, guys, can we just have Lois Lane back, please? Because it's so established that they're meant to be with each other from the second or third issue that Superman's in. And it's hard to change that stuff. But then in the last three images I put here is the first appearance of Catwoman, where she's just called Cat, and you can see kind of, if I can kind of read it too for people who won't be able to see this right away if they don't see the chats or anything. Batman's flirting with her right away, even though she's a criminal, and she asks him like, why don't we team up? We could be a great team. And he goes, this really tempts me, but you're a thief and you broke the law, so I can't do that. And then she jumps off and gets away. And as they're riding away, Robin's like, oh man, she got away. And Batman's like, man, she was really pretty, wasn't she? And like he's super like into her and not even thinking about her getting away. He's just thinking about how pretty she was and how they kind of hope that they run into each other again.
Hey, I mean, he can run into her again if he lets her go.
Yeah,
so
and
she'll come back around.
It's a really interesting start to their relationship versus like the other big established one, which is just two people that work together and one's just crushing on him. Well, this is like a criminal that he's up against, and he's like, ah, man, I kind of love her though.
Yeah, I mean, what is the worst thing Catwoman's done? I know that's a large question, but like she's really just sort of a cat burglar, from my understanding, right? She's not like hurting people, right? Or am I wrong?
No, that's actually like a really interesting point from this is I think the biggest reason why this relationship kind of works for them is for the most part, Catwoman's never killed anybody. Like there's a couple things we'll kind of talk about, but she's never
Yeah,
straight up
good
murdered
for her.
anybody. She's either getting revenge on someone, which means bodily harm in that way, or she's robbing them blind. And it's kind of hard. A lot of the time she's justified, and it's hard for Batman to be like, well, this is technically a crime, but also you're kind of right.
Yeah. My brain's like, Batman's like, I'm not a cop. Steal what you want. Just don't hurt anybody.
Yeah, it kind of it becomes down the road, and it becomes a fun like cat and mouse game. There's what happens though down the road is continuity in DC gets really complicated and messy, and they do this thing called Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they reboot it. That's like the first big reboot. And when they do that, they ask the writer at the time, hey, can you give us like a gritty reestablishing of Batman? Can you redo his origin and kind of get rid of the silliness and give us something serious? Which is not the start of the grimdark kind of Batman stuff that started in like the 70s, and this is more the 80s, but it reestablishes Catwoman and him to have a different origin, where on like the first night he goes out, he tries to save this young woman from basically she's a prostitute, but he's trying to like stop that from happening. And her pimp's like, hey, no. and they beat the crap out of him. And Catwoman comes out and she helps him kind of fight off these guys, but also beats the crap out of him a little bit because she thinks that he's attacking her friend. And so in that reboot, they meet on the street, and it's a very different encounter. Like she's violent against him, and like they have a rough encounter. But there's something that kind of lingers there that they remind each other of that when they meet each other again in costume. Like a year later, when he's in his costume and she's in her, he's like, wait a second, I fought you once before, didn't I? Like we had this dance before.
Oh, shoot.
And so that relationship kind of like builds over the decades. And I'm going to put another photo in just a second once I find it. There comes this moment where Batman's not Batman because he gets really broken, and a new guy replaces him. And this new guy fights Catwoman, and Catwoman goes, you don't smell like him. You're not him. I know what he smells like. And he's not scared when I show up out of nowhere because he knows what I sound like. And you're scared of me. And like, what's wrong? Like, you're not him. You're not the guy that I know. Because at this time, he knows that she's Selena Kyle, but she doesn't know he's Bruce Wayne or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I find that super interesting because like they're establishing like these people, like they know each other way more intimately than like the comics let on at times.
Yeah. I mean, it tracks. Even me as a normal human, like I can recognize who's opening the door just based on my interactions with that person. And, some people smell like home. Like I can kind of get it. A superhero is just intensified. And I like how they play that into their story a little bit, but also what's happened that hasn't shown on the pages. Are there more interactions that we don't know about? I think that's cool.
Yeah, there's that lingering thing. And then as it continues, like there's not a moment where people ever think about like, oh, this is going to be Superman and Lois Lane where they get married and everything. People are like, no, this is just a cat and mouse game, because that's really what they keep alluding to. And then down the road, they do this another like really intensive story arc where basically they admit to each other that they kind of can't do this without each other. And it builds up to a point where Bruce is like, oh, okay, I have to show you who I am. And that arc ends with like him revealing to her that he's Bruce Wayne. And she's like, I kind of already knew, but it's nice for you to finally tell me.
Yeah.
But that kind of changes the whole dynamic of them too, because now she knows everything. Because if he's Bruce Wayne, that means Nightwing's Dick Grayson, and all these people, like she connects the dots really fast.
Yeah.
And he does this without telling anybody, which is one of those fun and also annoying caricature traits that Batman can't seem to shake, where he just makes these decisions without informing the people that will be impacted.
I hate it when people do that.
Yeah, it creates a really fun dynamic though down the road where they're like, you just let this criminal into our life. He's like, yeah, but I kind of love her.
But this one, I like this one. I mean,
yeah,
everybody gets their universally assigned cat, and I guess Batman Batman's cat is Catwoman.
And then there's these other storylines down the road where like they can't be together for whatever reason, and they have established another relationship with her and this other character, and the hit Batman and this other character named Sam Bradley, that's his name, is they're meeting on a rooftop talking about Catwoman, and Batman just goes, "She made us crazy, hasn't she? Like she's really driven us to this breaking point of like a man can't handle this anymore." And both of them kind of realize like she's just like one of the best of them, but at the same time, you can't contain what Selena Kyle is, and Selena Kyle is a cat. She's like she does whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And it's one of those dynamics that keeps coming back up. And how does someone so controlling like Batman kind of like deal with it? The answer is he doesn't, but
nope.
He has to kind of answer that himself. There's this other great interaction that I'll post too, is like they at one point he's like, "What do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want to do?" And she's like, "What do I want? I just want to go on a date. Can we just go on a date?" And so there's just this like 3 pages where they have a normal life and they go on a date and they're not wearing costumes. And I think the idea of the mask with these two is also really interesting to kind of go back to Superman and Lois, who is like the only real couple that you can compare these two in DC, right? Is Superman, Clark Kent's the mask for Superman, but he's not really a mask. He's glasses. It's not really anything. And Lois Lane is just Lois Lane. She's a person. So when they get together, there's no dual identity with those two. They're just Clark Kent and Lois Lane.
Yeah.
With Batman and Catwoman, there is this, they both have these really strong dual identities. There's Catwoman and Selena Kyle, and there's Batman and Bruce Wayne. And neither one of them, they both struggle on and off again, like with when can I take off my mask? When can I be real with you? And there's a moment where I think she gets really close to being killed in one storyline, and she's recovering from that, and she just can't seem to get over the fact that she almost died. And he goes to take off her mask because he took his off, and they're trying to talk. And she goes, "No, I can't do this. Can you put your mask back on? I need this to be fake."
Oh no.
Like, I need this to be not my reality for a moment. So can we just do this with our masks on? And so there's moments like that are just really, like, I think brilliant writing.
Yeah.
And then there's also, at some point she has a kid. They totally retcon this down the road, but at some point she has a kid. And
whose kid is it?
It's, I want to say this again, this is comic books in the early 2000s and stuff, so it's a bit messy, but it's the son of Sam Bradley's kid. Yeah, she's for some reason falls in love with his son at some point, but it gets to a point where like Bruce shows up and he's holding the kid, and she's like, he would be a great, this is before Damien's on the scene and everything, and she's like, he would be a great dad. And he would be a great dad to this kid. And I don't think I ever realized how much he just cared. Like, he's not about vengeance anymore. It's not about just beating the crap out of guys every night to kind of numb the pain of his parents. It's about the innocent now. It's about he wants to protect these poor people who can't protect themselves anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of nice to see her realize that. So that's all like the early history of them kind of building up to eventually Batman technically dies at some point, but they think Bruce Wayne's dead. And there's this nice little moment before he dies where she is in the hospital again. And he's like, I'm just going to confess my love again. I'm going to tell you how much I love you. And I'm sorry that we kind of like have had this song and dance. And he's like, he doesn't even think she can hear him because she's like in a coma. As he's walking away, she goes, "I've been awake the entire time."
That's smooth, though. That's so smooth.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, oh, this man's about to confess his love. I'm still in a coma. Bet.
And then after that story arc, he's gone for a bit. And then when he comes back, though, my favorite thing is like, she's interacted with whoever's in the mask at that point, which is Dick Grayson, and she knows it's Dick Grayson, and she's like, "Okay, well, I'll work with you even though you're not him," and everything. And he doesn't tell anybody he's back. He's just back, and he saves her from something, and she's like, nice one, Dick. That was cool. And like as she gets closer to him, she's like, wait a second, you're not Dick, you're Bruce. And they just start making out like right away.
Aww. Good for them.
Yeah. But that brings us all the way to this era of DC Comics called Rebirth, which was the idea of it was, let's bring back everything that we kind of written off and kind of start fresh, but at the same time kind of honor our past. And that run of Batman, that early run of Batman in the Rebirth era, kind of shaped me in a way recently. This was like, I want to say 2015 to 2018, maybe, that run specifically, where reading that month to month and getting the story the way I got it kind of changed me in a lot of ways. Like, it was a super impactful run. And like, if we ever do another Batman episode, I might just focus in about that entire run.
Absolutely.
But what it became is a romance between them. And that whole storyline builds up to, are they going to get married?
No.
And
So sweet.
Yeah, and it starts off really interesting with the first issue of it, where he asks, Batman is trying to stop a plane from crashing, and he doesn't think he's gonna make it out of it this time, just because like it's a plane and he's on top of it and it's crashing.
True.
Yeah, so he's like talking to Alfred, and he goes, "Hey, Alfred, if this is it, if this is where I die, is this a good death? Like, will my parents be proud of me dying this way?"
Mm-hmm.
And Alfred's like, you're my son, but yes, this would be a good death if you die. And he doesn't. He gets saved at the last second because it's comic books and someone saves him.
Yeah.
But that's like kind of the first glimpse of like what the initial part of this storyline is like, what is Batman? And he has to do another suicide mission not too long after this. And he has to get a team together, and he has to get Catwoman, who at this point is in jail for murdering almost 300 people.
What?
And I know we talked about this before, like Catwoman doesn't murder people.
No.
There was a moment where she killed this character named Black Mask, like in the early 2000s, and Bruce is like, you know what? I know you did it, and I know I wouldn't do it. He was really bad, and I'm not gonna like put that against you. He was a bad dude.
It's just like, thanks, because I couldn't have done it, but also like,
So when he pulls her out of Arkham for this mission, because he gets kind of free reign to pull whoever he wants, and they say like Selena Kyle in prison for murdering 290 something people, because what you learn is like she supposedly killed the whole orphanage.
What?
I will explain like what the storyline becomes. It's really shocking because you're like, this isn't Catwoman, this hasn't been her thing. And so you learn this, you get this back and forth. This is really like nice thing that this writer does a few times. This writer Tom King, who did this whole run, where they write letters to each other, Batman and Catwoman in this run a lot, and that will become the captions for an entire issue. So you're seeing all this action happen, but in the background is this letter between the two of them. That kind of the action is kind of showing, like kind of giving emotion to the letter in different ways. And this first one, I believe, is to her, from her to him. The wording is a little blurry, but hopefully it doesn't do too bad. I can read it. But basically, she's saying to him, "Isn't it kind of like silly that you're a rich kid and you're doing this?" She's like, I grew up from nothing. I had to live in an orphanage, but I got put in a really nice orphanage. You know what orphanage I got put in? I got put into your parents' orphanage, the Thomas and Martha Wayne orphanage.
Oh my gosh.
And inside the Thomas and Martha Wayne orphanage was this image of you guys, of you and your family. And what's so funny about it is like, I looked up to you and I'm like, that kid looks kind of sad. I wonder why he's sad. He has everything. And it becomes a really cute thing of like, she grew up looking at him. And it's something that's never really established before, because like they talk about her being poor and stuff, but like she knew who Bruce Wayne was as a kid, and that was like someone she looked at every day.
That's so wild. Oh my goodness. I had
And
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go for it.
I was just reflecting on that energy of it. I didn't look up to somebody my whole childhood and then eventually fall in love with them, but I do remember actively like seeing like street signs of like somebody that I later on met as a coworker have like street signs and like political advertisements or whatever, because they were much older than I was, but to meet that person, be like, wait, that was you? The signs that I kept seeing off the side of the interstate when I was a kid, like, holy crap. So just amplifying that to the Batman and Catwoman degree of like, oh my gosh, that must have been wild. But she kept that to herself the whole time, because I would not have been able to keep that to myself the whole time.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny because the letter then goes on. I didn't get the whole letter because I'm like, I don't want to have Roman read a whole issue of a comic book. But
True.
the letter continues on to basically say like, we wear these masks and we have this song and dance and we're both in extreme pain. Like she's like, my childhood was traumatic, your childhood was traumatic, and we both carry this pain. But for that one moment that we kiss each other, there's no pain. Isn't that kind of silly? Aren't we just a bunch of silly people doing this silly thing? So his letter is the next issue, and it's kind of his response to hers. And this is in this they kind of had this back and forth in earlier issues, but this run really establishes them calling each other Bat and Cat, which is, I mean, it's the ship name, right? But it's literally like him going like, "Hey Cat," and she goes, "Hey Bat." Like it's really cute.
I love that so much.
But when he talks about like it, like she talks about how silly he is that he dresses up and stuff like that, and he goes, I don't find it that silly. He's like, I think of you, and I think about how my mother and father and the whole world would laugh at me if they knew who I was and anything like that. But he's like, but you wouldn't. You don't laugh at me because you know exactly why I do this, and you know exactly the pain I feel when I do this. So you don't laugh at me. You just understand me. And then he kind of ends. He's like, so he's like, yeah. So when we kiss, the pain goes away, and it's because in that moment we share the death that we both kind of hang on to. We both share death. And in that letter, and this is again a little content warning about like self-harm, but like this is something that again is never talked about in the comics before this. And some people would either hate this because they are too, I think, hard to self-reflect and realize people these characters are like, I like comic books when they let the characters be real. Yes, you can have Bat God, which is the Batman who knows everything, you can stop Darkseid with a bullet and everything like that. But these characters matter to me a lot because they feel real most of the time. And in this letter, he reveals to her before he became Batman, before he made the decision, he tries to kill himself because he can't handle the burden of losing his parents. And Alfred finds him and saves him, and he gets over it. And that's when the bat flies in. He realizes what he needs to do. And he goes, so I became Batman, and I became my own suicide. He says, I am suicide because I am the thing that will kill Bruce Wayne. Batman will kill Bruce Wayne at some point.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then like, it's like if in face value, it's really dumb, but honestly, it's so profound. Like I'm trying not to cry because like, I really love the idea that he realizes that what I'm doing now, this is my constant suicide that I'm doing. And you're the only one that understands it because you also put on a costume.
This is so deep. Oh goodness, I'm having a moment. I love this kind of stuff so much. Like not the trauma part, but the storytelling aspect of it. It's like it, especially when there's a storytelling or like a writing. I don't want to say trope, but like a thing like I've been reading Berserk, and there's so many things in Berserk that if anybody else did it, it would just be bad. Yeah. But somehow they do it so good, and it's like, oh my god, I'm having a moment with you. We're in this together.
So before I dive like super deep after what happens after this plot line is I did say I wanted to mention other superheroes and stuff where there is a really weird established for especially with these really famous relationships like Clark Kent and Lois Lane, Peter Parker and Mary Jane, or Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, Reed Richards and Sue Storm, like the Fantastic Four relationships. Anything like that, it's a hero either falling in love and marrying a very normal, or not normal, but very strong woman, right? Yeah. But they're not a criminal or in any way. There's no negative about them in that way. You can kind of say that the Peter Parker and Black Cat story, like romance is kind of that, but that comes after Batman and Catwoman, so I'm not gonna, because that kind of like that reason that exists is because Batman and Catwoman exist.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very few of these really famous and powerful romances in the big continuity comics that it's Batman who is justice incarnate and Catwoman who is a thief. She is a criminal. She is everything that he said he would not. Like, she's not a murderer, except for what they say right now in this where I'm at in the story. But for him, she's spitting in the face of his mask. She's spitting in the face of the oath that he gave to his parents. Yet he can't stop loving her in any way. Like, once he meets her, he's like, I'm in. This is it.
I picked you. This is it now.
So I think that one aspect of their relationship is something that keeps being brought up and puts a weird nail between them, but is one of those things where no other comic book relationship can do this dynamic in this way. And if they do, it kind of always falls flat for me, because there's something so honest about a man being like, I know I made all these promises to other people, but for you, they're out the window.
Don't matter.
So after this mission, she has to go back to jail because she's accused of killing all these people, and she says she did it. But they kind of have like a reprieve before that happens, and he's like, hey, let's just have a night together. And he's like, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, what do you want to do? We have a night before I have to go back to prison. And he goes, and the bat signal pops up behind him, and he kind of like tilts his head to look at it. And she goes, oh, I know what you want to do. And like the next 10 pages is them beating up a bunch of his villains together.
Oh my goodness.
And he's like, okay, well, I think we're done with that for the night, but we still have some night left. What do you want to do? She's like, well, we did what you want to do, so let's do what I want to do. And he has to help her rob a jewelry store.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, and like at the moment, like she's like cutting through the glass. He's like, I really don't like that we're doing this. She's like, we got to do what you wanted to do, so now we get to do what I want to do. And you learn that this really insignificant thing that she robs has full of diamonds. So like it wasn't ever insignificant. And she doesn't want them. She just tosses them on the roof that they're on. And this two-issue story arc is called Rooftops because that's where they always meet. They always meet on the rooftops. They're always chasing each other on these rooftops. And the first part of that issue kind of ends with them just having sex on this rooftop because they're in this moment together. And they're out of costume and they're just on top of everything. And the next one opens up with them kind of recounting their romance. And this is what I was talking about, like that continuity shift is really kind of important to this part of the romance because the writer knows there's two origins to the romance and he's going to use it. So it starts off with captions of them kind of talking and he goes, it was on a boat. And she goes, no, it was on the street. And he goes, no, you're an old lady. And she goes, no, you look like some dirty homeless man. And he's like, yeah, you were in disguise and like, you were trying to rob someone. She's like, no, you were like fighting these thugs on the street and I helped you. Like, and they're having this old couple debate of how they met each other because there's two different versions of how they met each other.
That's so cool. And so clever. I love that.
And so he comes basically says, I know you too well. I know you didn't kill those people. And she goes, but I did. I did it. I said I did it. I did it. He goes, I know you didn't, and I want to figure out what's going on here. And it turns out she's protecting that woman, but way back when they meet on the street, that Batman was like trying to protect. She's protecting that girl who actually did it. And she did it by accident. It was not like her purpose to accidentally burn down this orphanage. It just kind of happened. But someone had to be blamed, and Catwoman was going to take the blame because she didn't want her friend's life to be ruined. No. And as much as Batman kind of like understands this, he kind of can't stand for it. So he goes after her. And the lady runs and basically Catwoman's like, well, I'm free now, kind of, but I'm still going to be hunted because they think I still did it. And now my only proof that I didn't do it is gone because you kind of got in the way of things. And the story arc ends with him coming back to Alfred and goes, she stole it. She stole something from me. He goes, what did she steal? She didn't steal anything. She goes, she stole the night. She stole the night from me. Which is the idea of like her stealing time that he had because she's now gone. So there's a lot more back and forth that they have. And he finally catches up to her again, and he realizes that he kind of needs to make a move finally. Like this whole storyline is Batman kind of realizing that he's human and time's kind of moving, and so he finally needs to make some moves in his life. And he goes, basically, remember I said that we met on a boat and you stole this diamond? And she goes, well, it's the street, but okay, continue. And he goes, that diamond, soon as after the next day, after the diamond went back, I bought the diamond. And I knew as soon as I bought the diamond when I was going to use that diamond. And that diamond is right here, right now. Do you want to marry me?
Aww.
So that first thing that he caught her stealing, he bought and held on to it because he knew one day he was going to ask her to marry him. And he's like, but that moment, she's just a thief, a typical thief.
Oh my gosh, look at him go.
Look at our poor boy growing up.
He's growing up. He's in love. Look at him.
So this leads into another storyline that, again, it's very divisive, called the War of Jokes and Riddles. And it's Batman basically like, okay, if we're going to get married, you got to know the secret about me. And the secret was there was this really nasty gang war that she knew about it because she was a part of it at points, between the Riddler and the Joker that ended up killing like over 100 people or something, like in the crossfire. And he goes like, I was so young and so naive that I thought I could stop this with debate and stuff as Batman, that I lost my cool and almost killed the Riddler, and the Joker stopped me from killing the Riddler. And so the only person that stopped me from ever crossing that line was literally my mortal enemy. And you need to know that secret about me because no one else does.
My goodness gracious.
And she basically says, dude, we're humans. You don't have to worry about that. But if you think like I don't like he says to her, like, you don't have to love me after hearing this. She's like, you don't think I love you after hearing about you just having a faulty moment? So she basically says to him, she goes, Bruce, I need you to just ask me again to marry you, but don't be a boy. Just ask. And they do. So now we enter this one of my favorite like runs of stories called the Engagement story arc. Basically, it's a bunch of like small vignette stories, like 2 to 3 issues of Bruce kind of having to break the news to some people that he's marrying Selina. One, this is another big Bruce thing. He doesn't tell any of the boys. Alfred tells the boys.
Wow.
And it especially makes Damien, who's his biological son, mad that he's marrying this criminal. But not just that, like, I think for Damien, there's always this sense that he would marry his mother. Like they would reconcile and get back together.
Oh no.
And so that becomes a really interesting dynamic. But that leads into then the first storyline of this, where they have to go to Talia and they have to talk to her because she's harboring the woman that is actually to blame for killing all those people. And they need that woman back to prove that Catwoman is innocent and she can have her freedom and not have to worry about it. So there's this great dynamic between Talia and Selina where it gets kind of messy because there's a moment in Batman history where Talia was not respected super well, and they made it seem like that she assaulted Bruce to have Damien, but that was never really the case. They really did like each other, and like there's many other issues that prove that they like he did love her. He was in love with her. She's like the only other person, but she's like a straight up like her and Ra's are like terrorist group. Like it's a terrorist group, right? So like he's like, I can't though. Like this is literally something I cannot do. There's not a line I can allow to cross. So they never like get together really, except for that one moment that leads to having Damien. So this is interesting because it's basically the only other person he's ever really fully been in love with now facing the person he's engaged with. And Talia's like, do you have a sword? We got a sword fight about this. And the only sword around is literally in Bruce's shoulder. And Selina's like, fine. And just rips it out of his body.
Oh my God.
And that's just, I put that moment in. It's not like really about the romance. It's just how cool Selina Kyle is that she was like, oh, you know, I know I love you, but also I need this sword. So hold on.
Thanks for holding that for me. I need that for a sec.
And they have this nice back and forth where Talia goes, do you really think, she's like, being married means you guys are equals? Like you think that you really think that you're equal to this man, this great detective, this person that like is impenetrable in like his knowledge and his skills and things. And she goes, yeah, yeah, I think I am. And then Talia's like, why laugh at that? Because like, you're definitely not. Basically, Selena's whole argument is Batman is all about justice. He's all about saving the innocent. He's all about doing what's right. And for that, he will betray everybody. He will betray you. He'll betray me. He'll betray everybody he cares about if that means he gets justice. And you know what? I don't care about that because he is the stupid man that I love.
Aww.
And so that kind of ends their argument. She's like, you love him? You're a fool if you love this man. And they have this sword fight, and basically Talia gets her butt handed to her by Catwoman, and she gets impaled the same way that Batman gets impaled with the sword. And like Catwoman's like, "Okay, now you can hold the sword," and she puts it in her shoulder.
Oh my gosh!
As as Selena's getting the person back, her Talia and Bruce talk together, and he goes, "Talia," and she goes, "Detective." She goes, so that's you're engaged to, and he goes, "Yep," and she goes, "You know what? I like her." So it's like one of those things where like the last engagement person kind of gives approval, and the storyline ends with Damien's there, and he goes, "So you got my dad? Yep." And you got the person you need? Yep. And she goes, how's my mom? Like you saw my mom. How's she doing? She goes, well, she stabbed your dad in the back, and I kind of stabbed her in the back. And Damien goes, oh, okay, I see things haven't changed. So then the next story arc is he doesn't tell Clark right away. He doesn't tell Superman, who's his best friend, that he's getting engaged. But they set up this like double date thing. And it was just back and forth between, kind of juxtaposed between Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Selena Kyle and Bruce, where they're both Bruce and Clark are like, well, he didn't call me, so why should I call him? And both of them are like, dude, just call your best friend to talk about this, please.
I love that. It's just like, dude, just talk about it, damn it.
Yeah. And so they have this nice back and forth where they go on this double date, and there's this great moment with that. I'm loading in the images right now where they meet each other, and Superman's like, I didn't see you come in. He's like, you're not supposed to see me come in. I'm Batman. He goes, why'd you take the elevator? You're Superman. He's like, well, I hate breaking into the floors. And they're having like this back and forth, like stupid boy debate. And Lois goes, hey, I'm Lois Lane. You must be Catwoman. Nice to meet you. Because they had never met.
Oh my goodness.
So they go to this carnival, and the carnival you have to be in costume. The only costumes they have are literally their Batman and Superman costumes and their Catwoman costume. So what they do is they swap costumes for the night.
Oh my
So
gosh.
Bruce dresses like Superman, Clark dresses like Batman, Lois dresses like Catwoman, and Selena just dresses like whatever Lois dresses, and she threatens the guy at the thing. He's like, let me in. Like, just let me in.
Oh, I love this image of them eating corn dogs. That's
yeah,
cute.
and like he's like, I'm gonna have to kick a lot of Bruce is like, I'm gonna have to kick a lot of trees after eating this corn dog. And Lois like, why do you have to kick a tree? And I just kind of referencing that there's these images that show him training as a kid, like he would kick trees to get stronger and stuff. And Clark is like, I kicked a tree once, felt so bad, I just planted a bunch of trees after that. And Selena's like, just shut up and eat your corn dogs, please.
Oh my gosh.
And then kind of to show the juxtaposition between the relationships, they do the tunnel of love, and when Clark and Lois come out, they're like, oh, that was a nice time. And then when Bruce and Selena come out, they're just straight making out on top of each other.
Oh my gosh.
And then they become, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was like, this does kind of have a little bit of that new love versus a long-term love kind of energy at the same time.
Yeah, and like them finally accepting that they can just be together versus people who've been together for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then they talk about how like her and Selena brings in a flask, of course. Oh no, actually Lois brought in the flask, and they're drinking while the boys are trying to play baseball together, and talking about like Selena's like, it's stupid. When I fall, he catches me, and that's kind of like why like I love him. He's always there. And she's like, you must not understand at all. Like, it's literally Lois Lane, the most damsel in distress damsel in all of comic books. And so that's very cute. And then the last part of the real engagement storyline is there's this storyline where you learn that Bruce and Wonder Woman, like Batman and Wonder Woman, made this deal that if this man ever called for their help, that they would help him. And so this deal finally gets called. And so Wonder Woman and Batman have to go help this guy. And that means it's a comic thing where like this man fights in this dimension to save the universe for eons, and time moves differently there. So like 1 minute here is 100 years there or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they have to take care of it. They don't age. Time doesn't really move, so they age or anything. So Wonder Woman and Bruce have to go do this thing, and they're there for days. So they're the only two people there for years, while Selena's like stuck here talking to this guy, and she's like, "Wait a second, they're telling me that they're now been in there for decades compared to us. You go back right now and bring him back to me." And there was this really big controversial end of the first half of the story arc where it looks like Wonder Woman and him were going to kiss in the other dimension, because they had like a kind of like an on and off thing in the past before too. And they've been the only two people around each other for years now. Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, is he really going to have him cheat on Catwoman while they're engaged? Like, is this really what's going to happen? And they don't. You learn that they don't.
Oh, good. Okay.
And Wonder Woman at the end of it all goes, everybody says you're a criminal, right? That you just steal things. Well, I think you're wrong, because I see you as a hero because you've finally made my friend very happy.
Aww.
And at the end, Bruce goes, I have something I have to tell you. It's like important. And she goes, wow, 37 years of Wonder Woman. Were you bad at all? And he goes, not bad, but not good enough. And she goes, okay. And he goes, this is new, but I'm really trying to like really stick whatever. He's like, she goes, yeah, okay, cool, but try harder next time, please. Like, don't get close to it next time.
Yeah, please. Thanks. Appreciate it, bud.
So that kind of leads into the big wedding issue that they've been building to. Everybody's like, I can't wait for them to get married. And in the background, there's that worry, like, will they, won't they get married? Because this is comics we're talking about. And this is another issue where they're writing letters to each other. There's a small issue before that where you learn that her wedding dress, which was designed by like a woman, thankfully, because a lot of like wedding dresses in comics are like designed by dudes who are the artists, but like the woman, they're like an actual woman designed this wedding dress, so it looks really cool.
Hell yeah.
But she steals the wedding dress and doesn't tell him because she just needed to do that one more time.
You need to do a crime one more time.
Yeah. And on the way to the wedding, she's talking to the one of her friends, and she's like, am I a hero for doing this? He's like, do people really think I'm going to be a hero? She goes, yeah, of course you're going to be a hero. After everything you've done and you're marrying Batman, you're going to be a hero now. Like, you're just going to be a hero. And that kind of eats at her in a weird way. It's like, is that what I want? And also, Bruce at the same time is asking, like, I'm going to be happy now. Don't I deserve to be happy? And Alfred's like, dude, after everything, of course you deserve to be happy after all the sacrifice you made. And Selena kind of leaves him at the altar there.
Aww.
And for a moment, he realizes that she did. And he's like, you know what? I'm going back to work. And he jumps off the roof and he's like going back to being Batman. And it becomes a weird thing where the storylines after this, he becomes much meaner. There's have you ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men?
No.
They basically do a parody of that movie where it's 12 jurors trying to decide if Mr. Freeze is guilty of something. And Bruce Wayne is one of the jury members, but he's also Batman, the guy that put him there.
Hey.
And he's like, I think Batman was wrong because he knows that he went too hard. And he knows he kind of beat the confession out of Mr. Freeze. And he doesn't know if he was right actually or not. And so there's stuff like that. And the hits kind of keep on happening for Bruce, where Dick gets shot in the head and he thinks he loses his first son. And things like that just kind of keep on happening. And it's just back to back, just bad news for Bruce Wayne for a while, which leads into this story arc called Nightmares. It's another very controversial story arc with this writer. I think this writer doesn't intentionally tell controversy, but people just like don't like him messing with the good things sometimes.
Yeah.
Where they're very disjointed and confusing stories. But if you read them in a row, you're realizing that this is literally every nightmare Batman has in a row. One is like his son, Damian becoming a murderer. One is like just not being able to catch somebody that he's been chasing forever. And the last storyline is it's called like, I think it's called The Dance, and it's a dance between him and Catwoman. And there's subplots and stuff going on that kind of like, who's the real bad guy of this whole story arc? Who turns out is his dad, but that's a whole other story.
Ayo.
But he asks her in this nightmare, he's like why couldn't we get married? Like why'd you leave? And she goes in this nightmare, you don't love me. You don't know how to love me because you love this too much. You love all this too much. There's no way you can love me. And he goes, but I do love, like, I love you, Kat. I love you so much. And she goes, you don't, you can't. I'm sorry. Like, you just don't. And that's his nightmare, is like, that's what she really thinks. And she's like, it was a nice dance, but I got to go now. Like, this is over. And that's how that like nightmare ends for him.
Like, I can see it though a little bit of like, she was worried about her autonomy. She's just becoming a wife. She's not even there. Her identity's being ripped from her by entering this marriage. And I don't think he even really acknowledged that.
Yeah. There's that underlying thing where it's like, does she have to give away everything she loves to do because she's marrying this man? And he just kind of assumes that everything will be okay. So that leads into another big story arc where he loses Gotham, and because of all of this trauma that's been happening, and he gets left for dead somewhere. And who comes to save him, of course, is her. She shows back up, and it's been like a dozen or so issues where she hasn't really been around, and she finds him. And when she first finds him in the snow, like half dead, she just grabs him by the collar and goes, "It was the street." And basically she's like, you want to take your city back, then you got to learn from me. We're going to do it my way. We're going to get this guy. Bane has become the bad guy in this part of the story. And we're going to get him back, and we're going to do it my way. And we're going to do it dirty, and you're going to have to live with it. So there's this whole kind of like them on a honeymoon is basically what the story arc is. A pseudo honeymoon, but it's really also him building back up his confidence and strength in things. And there's their image that I sent. So she goes, how do you feel? And he goes, I'm fine. And she goes, oh, Bat, I like how you lie to me. She could just read him. Also, I love that they draw him as Magnum PI because he has to be in disguise because Bruce Wayne's so famous.
Oh my goodness.
And
they're kayaking.
Yeah, it's very, I love this part. Is a very cute part for them. And they have this other interaction when they're not in the same room. They're not sleeping in the same room. They're like the rooms are adjacent so they can talk through the wall. And she goes, these walls are really too thin. I can hear that you're awake. And when you're awake, I'm awake. So please go to sleep. And he goes, I'm awake. And she's like, how do you know? And he's like, how do you know I'm awake? And she goes, you're breathing. I can tell when you're sleeping because your breathing changes. You have all this tension and then you stop. You let it go. And he goes, I'm just breathing. I don't let it go. She's like, you let it go when you're with me. And it's like, you guys marry. Like, just get married.
Just do it.
And she goes, just go to sleep. I'm tired of worrying about you. She goes, he's like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. She goes, don't you ever get tired of lying? And he goes, yes, all the time.
Oh my goodness. I need to know.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt. This particular page, this last one you sent, and the one before that, who's the artist? I need to thank them for drawing Bruce Wayne like this. I need
his name is Clay Mann. He draws everybody extremely hot.
He does.
He does a lot of these story arcs, especially near the end. Yeah, he's very good. So they have this thing on where they kind of reestablish their relationship through this and kind of reconnect. And she kind of admits to him, like, that's why I was afraid about, that you would just kind of take my life away if we got married. He goes, I wouldn't do that. We would figure it out. And he goes, we were close and we didn't make it. And that broke me and that ruined everything. Like, that's why I fell so far. But never at one point during all of this did I blame you and thought this was your fault because you left me at the altar. Like, I didn't ever blame you. It's just my fault. I broke. And you believed that that you needed to leave me so I could still be Batman and you could be you. And you believed it. But he's like, I don't need any of that. All I need right now is you because I'm not fine and I need you. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And so they kiss on the beach and they go, at the end, she's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get your city back, everything. And I love this last line before they kiss at the end of this issue. She goes, oh, poor rich boy. You have no idea what you're getting into. And so they do a bunch of like kind of small missions to kind of get back into the groove of things. And it ends, the honeymoon part ends with him thanking her for kind of like reestablishing who he is. And he goes, it was on the street or it was on the boat. I don't care. I just know you. And we kind of like, they basically reestablish their relationship at this moment. So that issue also ends with like, you know what? We met on the beach. And he goes, yeah, we met on the beach, didn't we?
Aww.
And I love this last part. She's like, oh, we agree. Holy, whatever curse word you want to throw in there because they bleep it out in these books. But he goes, Bane is in trouble now.
She's so sassy. I love her.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And that leads into this another part where, like, if we were talking about just Batman in general, I would talk about a certain part of the story that makes me cry. But he's fighting Bane, and he tells Bane he was going to fight him one-on-one. And he goes, wait, you said one-on-one? He goes, yeah, I lied. And then Catwoman appears. So, like, it's them taking him out together.
Oh, my gosh.
So then this whole, like, story arc ends with them not technically getting married, but them kind of going back and forth about, should we get married? We should get married, right? And then like, we'll get married tomorrow at this time. I'll get the judge and everything. And they oversleep and they forget to do it. And she basically just says to him, you know what, let's just like stop trying to get married because through everything, we're Bat and Cat, we're forever. And you know what? I love you. Like, that's basically where it ends. It's like, we don't have to get married to say this is us. We are just us.
That is so sweet.
But that is not where I'm going to end it because this writer, Tom King, had this bit longer storyline and he had to get cut off from the main Batman book. Some people like to say it's because of the marriage thing where he like said they were getting married, they weren't, and there's so much backlash for that. But I don't know. You never know with editing and stuff. But he said he had another 12 issues that he wanted to write that he didn't get to write for this. But he's such a popular writer besides the chuds online who like to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like the wedding backlash for them not getting married was so negative from so many loud, like it's a minority, but it was such a loud minority that for like the next year at conventions, he had to hire a bodyguard.
It's wild.
It's
like,
so wild.
I mean, like even I can't what? Like, yeah, I was upset about it too, but like to get aggressive like that? Nutty. Mm-mm.
So there's this book that he does this 12 issue series called Batman Catwoman, which is did you ever watch Batman the Animated Series?
I've seen some of it. I haven't seen a lot of it, but I have seen some of it.
Did you ever see the movie they did called Mask of Phantasm?
No.
And there was this character with a hook hand and stuff.
Mm-mm.
He finally brings that character into the comics, and there's a weird thing where she was like a deep romance for the animated series Batman. So they kind of like bring that continuity in, and it's a weird back and forth. It's all about the holidays and stuff. It's really interesting book that kind of tells life at a timeline. Like it opens up with Selena as an old lady killing the Joker, who's an old man, and kind of establishes why does she do this as an old woman, and where's Bruce and all this, and their daughter is the new Batman and stuff. And so there's a lot of that going on in there. But I like these small moments that kind of want to wrap around with, where in the holiday special that they did for that series, there's this moment with small Selena in the orphanage where she's drawing a picture of a cat and she's talking to Bruce in the painting like he's there.
Aww.
And she goes, you look so sad. I just drew you this cat because I think you might like it. And then it shows her like a little bit older, and she goes, everybody's crying even though it's Christmas. And I don't think you're supposed to cry at Christmas. It's a rule that Santa has, right? Like you shouldn't cry, et cetera, et cetera. She's like, I don't have a mom or a dad either. And I heard you lost yours recently. And it's not so bad. If you want to talk to me, you can at any point. And she's still just talking to who's painting. And she goes, if you don't have any friends, I could be your friend. I think I could be your best friend.
Aww.
And so like, that's just really good. And it kind of then jumps forward in time to when they're older, and you kind of you learn that like there's this great image like, oh, the signal's out. He's like, I should go. And she goes, Bruce, it's Christmas, let your daughter handle it. And she goes, what is it? He's like, what is this, am I getting old? And she's like, of course you are, look at you. And he goes, what does it all mean for like the vow, the war, all of this that I do? She goes, it doesn't mean much. It just means you won because you can now like be here with me on Christmas.
Oh.
you learn in this storyline, and there's a annual that you kind of get this established that at some point fighting one of these villains, he gets really bad radiation poisoning.
Mhm.
And so he's like in his 70s or whatever, but he's dying of cancer because of this. And so she's taking care of them as she's watching him kind of die, which is very sad. It's a very
so
sad thing.
sad.
But they're back on the beach in this one shot, like where he's like really close to dying. And she like, at Christmas, it should be snowing right now. She goes, Bruce, just try to enjoy yourself. He goes, it's quiet here all the time. He goes, are you enjoying yourself? She goes, no, but at least I'm like just freaking trying to. Like, you should do it.
I'm trying, so you should.
And then this last panel I sent is like her at his grave. Like, she remember all, and she just can't stop wanting to talk to him, which I find so heartbreaking, but also like just beautiful at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
She says here is like, but talking about how one of her cats died and how much their daughter took it hard. And she goes here, so you said the pain was because she was feeling was because of that life that was lost, and that life was good, and so pain is good because of that. Like, it's good that we feel the pain when someone dies because life is good, right? She goes, I remember every word of that, and now you're gone, and I wanted you to hear this. You were wrong, you stupid man. For all your smarts and your money and your work, you were an idiot, Bruce. There's nothing good about this pain because he's gone for her.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is like that's the middle of that holiday special, and then it cuts to how they get married, and I really love it because like, yeah, this maybe isn't canon, but this is in the future, so it can be like I like to think this is. They get eloped in like a Vegas chapel with Clark and Lois as their kind of like witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
and then it cut back to them talking about getting married. And she goes, I mean, I kind of like you, but if I marry you, I don't want to have to become a wife that takes care of everything, cleans, does the dish. I don't want to be domesticated. And I don't want to do that because I just kind of like you. And I don't even know what that means yet. And he's beating the crap out of this guy. As you can see, he's beating the crap out of Killer Croc. Yeah. He goes, I love you. And I know exactly what that means to me. And she goes, excuse me, and like freaks out because like, this is a man who's just beating the crap out of this guy and saying like, I know how much I love you and I know what that means to me. So I'm whatever. It's fine.
As long as you're around, I really don't give a shit.
And that last issue ends with them getting married by a guy in an Adam West Batman costume playing the wrong music. He's supposed to play like some wedding music, but it plays Christmas music, and they kiss, married Batman and Catwoman to a very lovely Christmas song.
Aww.
And that's kind of like the long and short of their relationship. But I think it's just one of those relationships where like the dynamics between the two continue to keep it interesting. And they're still not married in like the main comics and stuff, but they like she leaves town in the most recent stuff, and he goes, why'd you leave? And she's like, I just needed to like know I can do this myself without you around. Without any of that. And he's like, you know what? I understand. Have at it. I'll be around if you need me.
Oh, I love they're not perfect. They have their flaws. They recognize each other's flaws. They love each other for those flaws, and they still somehow yet communicate. Like maybe not immediately, but all the time. But I really appreciate that because growing up, like there's just a whole lot of what relationships are supposed to be, or like quote unquote supposed to be, or they're always perfect and there's always a super happy ending. But I really love what's the word I'm looking for? It's just very, I guess this is the best way to describe it. It's just very dark and there's a lot of edges to it, and you can move it around like it's like a chunk of lava glass or something. And it's still beautiful, even though they've got their problems. And I have such a huge new appreciation for this now, because I just thought it's just because they're two goth superheroes that hang out at night. But it's like, no, there's so much more.
Yeah, and like
I love that so much.
And I think like there's some moments in the Tom King run where like not knowing the further backstory of a lot of these characters in the world and stuff might be a small hindrance, but he does a really good job of like putting everything in the page that you just need to know. So if anybody just like is curious about this, like the whole overarching storyline is not just about them. They're a huge part of it, like their relationship, but that whole storyline, which is like 80 something issues, becomes also a father-son story where an alternate version of his dad is in that world. And he's like, oh, my son's like killing himself being this hero because of some stupid vow. I'm going to break him and tell him how stupid this is. And ends up being like Bruce being like, I don't need my dad's approval to live in my life. To marry who I want to marry. Because like you find out like that's kind of one of the big wedges that happens is secretly his dad's been orchestrating their breakup. But first he orchestrated like the intense romance to break his son.
Wait, I need to backtrack. His dad's alive?
Yeah, it's a really weird thing where like when the universes get all kind of shattered and stuff, an alternate version of his dad gets left there, who is the Batman in an alternate reality. He goes, "Oh, I want my son to be Batman because that ruined my life. So I need to break him of this somehow."
Oh, okay.
And that's like the underarching plot of the whole thing.
That's a really screwed up way to do that, though.
Yeah, it's extremely screwed up. And it ends in one of my favorite lines of any Batman book where he's like, it's my life. Like it's literally my life. And it's not some stupid vow anymore. It's literally me. So no, I'm going to keep doing this.
Fuck you, Dad.
Yeah. But I think the romance of it though is so strong on its own that I thought it was good enough to just talk about.
Absolutely. Like I absolutely adore this. I'm a sucker for romance and romance comedies, just like the next guy, but this tickles my like demisexual side, if you will. Like it's not just because they're hot and it's not just because there's like quote unquote supposed to be together. They are, but there's so much to it and it fits together so nicely and I love it.
And they're just like, yeah, there's like the perfect like differences. Like they both fill in the different needs that they want. And it doesn't hurt that they're both extremely hot. Like it,
oh
like,
yeah.
Like there's literally why Bruce Wayne's like one of the biggest playboys, because even if his body's all scarred up, his face is good.
But scars are so cool though.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
There's a great moment that I didn't screen cap where she basically he wants to go like fight crime or something. She's like, stop it for a second, and she like undresses. She's like, come here for a second, and she looks at the mirror and she look at us, both of us, just naked, like look at us. This is who we are with the masks or without, and like in the shadow of behind them, kind of like in the last panel where they're kissing, it shows them in the same position in their costumes. Like that's the same person. So you don't have to pretend to be this hero or whatever, because we are the same people inside and outside of these masks now.
So good.
Yeah.
Aww.
That 12 issue series kind of piggies back and forth of like, what if when they do get married, like what does that relationship look like? And there's like a moment where she doesn't tell him about one of the Joker's plots because like to her, the Joker is kind of a friend. And he gets really mad at her about it. He's like, he's like, you're just one of them, aren't you? Like, I'm never going to break you of that. You're always going to just be one of them. And I can't trust you to help me with these things. So she's like, you know what? Screw you. I'm out. And like, she walks out on him for a bit and things like that. And I think those dynamics, they weren't like super necessary to kind of cover, but I think that's also super interesting that the writer kind of dives into that.
Yeah. There's going to be conflict, and superhero conflict in relationships is probably going to be way nuttier than a normal person conflict.
Totally.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot.
And there's a weird like pushback, I think, with a lot of fans that your characters can't change. And the same thing with like higher up editorials. It's like, well, we can't have Batman get married because I'll make him old. I mean, that's the whole reason Mary Jane and Peter Parker aren't married anymore, and they do that really terrible retcon that they did. It's because the executives thought, well, if Peter Parker's married, then he can't relate to teenagers anymore.
What?
Yeah. Like they're like, well, Peter Parker just being married makes him too old, and we don't want him to feel too old to these younger readers, so break him up. And it's just kind of weird that those stigmas are still kind of hanging around with where the sophistication of stories, especially people who read these stories now, they want these characters to kind of evolve and change and grow. And yeah, you can have a little bit of a status quo, but let it shake up every once in a while.
Yeah. There was something that released that had that same energy, and I'm trying to, was it Kingdom Heart? It was Kingdom Hearts 4 or 3, whichever one. Yeah, the newest Kingdom Hearts that came out a couple of years ago. And it's like I know that they were trying to make the game for young audiences, like they're usually trying to sell it off to teens or whatever. But it's like your whole fan base is like their mid 20s to 30s. Why are you pretending that's not happening right now?
Yeah.
What is going on here? I mean, I'm sure there's still stuff in there for the long-term fans, but still, like, I can that why haven't companies learned from that yet? Who's doing their market research? I have to know.
Well, Roma, do you have
Goodness.
any Batman Catwoman questions for me?
I'm trying to think. I guess I'm going to lead in with it a little bit. I went in with this, like I said, it was just a brooding man, rich boy, a little out of touch, dead parents, fighting crime, and that's his thing. And there's a hot lady who's cat burglar. That's a great bit. And I got the cat and mouse part. But I'm now my eyes have been opened up. Hashtag night vision. Now I could see this really beautiful relationship blossoming. And I'm in love with it. And I need to know, is this something that kind of stays within this writer? Or I'm sure this blossoms outside of this, like this kind of storyline. Like he can't be the only guy who got Batman married, right?
Oh yeah, no. There's definitely there's tons of moments before all this where their romance is pretty strong. It definitely depends on the writer. Tom King has I don't know if it's a good or bad reputation with people now, where he's very much the wife guy.
The wife guy.
Not only does he talk about his wife in his interviews all the time, but like all of his dudes just want to be wife guys. All of his like male characters. He wrote a really great run of Mr. Miracle where like Scott Free, who's Mr. Miracle, is just a huge wife guy in it. Like every time he's like writing a couple, the dude is a wife guy. And he kind of makes Bruce a wife guy throughout this storyline. So it's very strong because I think he's one of those writers who realizes that romance isn't like a genre that has to be by itself. Like it enhances anything it's around. And I think he's really smart with that stuff. So it's very strong in his run. It's extremely strong in his run. But even post his stuff, they bring it up from time to time. And like, he's still thinking about it. There is in the Catwoman comic itself, her solo book, Batman's about to show back up in it. And they're like teasing that it's going to be about the romance again. So I'm curious how that's going to pick up.
So excited.
But for anybody that kind of like doesn't want to read 80 issues of a comic, the movie Batman Returns, the second Michael Keaton one that has the Penguin and Catwoman, that has great Batman Catwoman moments. Like if you kind of get past it being a weird Tim Burton movie, like their romance is super strong in that.
I love that. I love to hear it.
And the newest Batman with Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, like, yeah, he's a little broodier, but whenever those two are on screen, like, oh yeah, these two like really they like each other.
Yeah.
There's a scene early on where like he's holding her to keep her quiet when someone's coming in, and you watch her like panic breathing, and then she realizes that she kind of likes that he's holding her, and like you can watch her like just kind of calm down and look up at him. And I like in the theater watching that, I'm like, oh, this is the good stuff.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, I love that. I love to hear it. Oh. We've talked a lot about Batman and Catwoman, but is there any other comic couple romances that I know you've mentioned a few? I mean, we got Superman and Lois Lane and Peter Parker and Mary Jane, but is there any other ones that come to mind on this beautiful Valentine's day after when this releases?
I did mention there, like Batwoman, like she's a very strong queer character, and I think all of her romances are very interesting because she's also like dating very strong like women throughout it. She's dating like Renee Montoya, who's like a strong cop, which I mean, cops in comics, that's a whole other thing. But then becomes a superhero in her own right, and she's like, I kind of, and then they break up, but then every time they see each other, like, do we want to like just sleep together again?
It's just the sweats.
You gotta love the messiness of that. And then like I do really like the kind of complexity of the Fantastic Four, like Reed Richards and Stu Storm, but not just that, like Ben Grimm, who's the Thing, and his wife. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, because they have they're like the first, like from the jump, they were married from the comics. Like the first issue Fantastic Four, Reed and Sue were married. And so they were the first married couple in comics, really. And a lot of writers were like, we should break them up. And it gets really messy and it gets weird. But whenever they're just like a couple that love each other and they're just trying to be science buddies together, it's a lot of fun. But then with the Thing and his wife, like he's a big rock man and she's blind. So it's like the first time that the reason they fall in love is like she can't see him and doesn't think he's a monster. And she just feels his face and goes, "Oh, I think you're really handsome." And he goes, "Oh, you think I'm handsome?"
Oh,
So that's really cute. They're really cute. There's a lot of like good small romances that don't get a lot of time to shine. Like Dick Grayson has like two really of the great romances that I don't want to say which one I prefer, because then people will start attacking me. But like,
oh no,
it's not that. It's just like there's such strong sides to both. Like it's either him and Barbara Gordon, who's Batgirl, or him and Starfire. And yeah, you're one or the other, and usually most people are very strong one or the other. The current Nightwing writer has been really pushing the Dick and Barbara or Dick and Babs relationship. And he gets all the hate from the Starfire fans.
Goodness. I don't know. I'm super for ethical non-monogamy, so it's like, why not both?
I think my favorite.
We have both.
I love messy relationships, I think, the most. And my favorite moment is like Barbara comes over at some point to talk to Dick and like thinks that they're having they're trying to build a relationship back up. And when she opens the door, it's just Starfire. They're naked, but she's not like, they didn't sleep together or anything. She just literally just like was there changing clothes and just doesn't care about what she looks like. So she opens the door and Barbara's like, "I can't believe Dick is sleeping with Starfire," and walks away.
Oh my god.
Just very good. So I love the messy stuff.
The drama.
And I love the couples that are like just fun to read when the writers are really grooving. Like Clark and Lois and Spider-Man and Mary Jane are like really good when the writers are like on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy. This is good. Thank you. Oh my
You're
goodness. Now I'm my partner has a subscription to the DC comic book app. So now I'm probably gonna pick through it and be like, okay, like we gotta have a book club now.
Yeah, that's where I got
Gotta
most
read
of my
these.
screenshots from. So all of it's on there.
Perfect. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I feel like you've explained everything and you've shared this hyperfixation with me so well that I don't really even think I have any like deep cutting questions or anything, because it's all just been laid out so nicely. So thank you again. Let's see.
They're just so good. I think about Batman a lot, but I think about Batman and Catwoman almost as much as I just think about Batman by himself.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the art of this Batman is going to be rent free all the time. I just scrolled back up. Rent free right there. Good man.
Yeah. This run has the best artists on it the entire time. Like there's not a bad looking issue.
Yeah. The composition's beautiful. The color's beautiful. The line, I love it. All of it's very good. It's also refreshing because I read so much manga to see more realistic looking everything instead of cartoony.
I mean,
So
I guess
good.
another relationship that we didn't talk about too much is like the Batman Joker relationship, which, depending on who's writing it, depends on if it's queer coded or not.
Oh, I love me some queer coded. Oh my gosh.
Because there's a whole small story arc before the wedding issue.
Oh,
Where the Joker like takes this couple hostage who's about to get married, and Batman has to go save them. And he incapacitates Batman, and Catwoman shows up, and they both basically stab each other in the neck, and they're both bleeding out slowly. And Joker goes, like, he's my best friend, right? Like this is the Joker talking to me. He's like, he's my best friend, right? And if you marry him, he'll stop being Batman. And so I have to kill you because I don't want him to stop being Batman. And then he passes out from blood loss before he can try to kill her.
Oh my gosh.
But
I
yeah,
mean, I get it. I love
yeah.
that. But also like, hey yo.
It's their relationship is very interesting. I think it's more fun when the Joker feels like he's maybe in love with Bruce, and where Batman's like, you're just so a maniac, dude. There's another great. I just read it recently. The only reason it's in my head is there's a moment where Joker's torturing Lex Luthor for some reason, and Lex is laughing, and Joker's like, "Why are you laughing? I'm torturing you." He's like, "I just wonder if you think about how like he'll never love you, but he loves Catwoman, and you just mess with the city all day and all night, and he just doesn't care about you, but he loves that Catwoman." And Joker goes, "I'm gonna kill this man. Give me the axe. I'm gonna chop him up."
You found this thing. You found the
Yeah,
thing. You're
you
dead.
found the thing.
Oh god. I never even how did I not? I mean, I don't actively I don't actively read comic books, so I don't think I would have picked it up. But now that I know it's a thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, like why haven't we played with this more? Oh, that's so good. I mean, I'm sure it's been played with a lot. But like in film, maybe? Like I would love to see that in a movie.
Yeah, there's less of it in the movies. Joker's usually like, you're just my antagonist a lot. But I think what's also interesting is like you compare the Batman Catwoman romance to the Joker Harley Quinn romance, where Harley's like being abused constantly, but she can't leave him for some reason. And then Poison Ivy gets introduced, and she's like, hey, but I like you. And that kind of like breaks that abusive cycle. And Catwoman has a huge part in a lot of the comics, helping kind of break Joker's hold off of Harley, which is fun.
Oh man, I did watch some of the Harley Quinn animated series, and I love that. I didn't get to any of the parts where in the animated series where they're more like lovey-dovey, but definitely seeing the part where she's like, dude, like stop worrying about the Joker. Like you're free now.
Yeah, I think there's a moment where the three of them are hanging out in the comics, and they realize that Catwoman knows who Batman is, and they start kind of beating her up because you knew this whole time and you didn't tell us. She's like, yeah, because I love the guy. Why would I tell you two who he is?
Catwoman's great. Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
she's good.
Is there anything else that you'd like to bring up on this lovely Valentine's Day episode? Anything else that comes to mind?
I feel like I've kind of exhaustively talked about my favorite romance. I think for anybody that kind of likes this stuff, feel free to, like, whenever this comes out, feel free to just bug me for recommendations, because I think romance and comics is a lot of fun. This writer, specifically Tom King, that did the major part of this that I talked about, he has an independent book called Love Everlasting right now.
Oh.
And the main premise of it is like the cheesy romance comics from like the 60s or whatever. They're always like, this lady is a nurse and she falls in love with this soldier she's healing, blah, blah, blah. And like, it's always a new romance every issue. And his idea of it is like, what if it's the same woman, though, that keeps on getting into these different romances, and she realizes that she's being put in all these different romances and she doesn't know why it's happening or why her life keeps changing. And it becomes like a weird, like, the dialogue is sweet at times and stuff, but the underlying story is very like horrific.
Yeah, it's an audio format, so you can't see my eyes getting huge, but I'm like, hey,
yeah.
And
like, there's a guy chasing her through all these romances who is like, you're supposed to be with me, and like, it's very like well done. And the artist on it, I don't remember her name, but like, she draws comics like you kind of think comics were drawn in the 60s, as he likes to say. Like, she has that retro vibe to her, her work. So it's really well done. Hear it.
That's so good. I have so much reading to do. Oh my goodness. So much pictures to look at and enjoy and feel emotions. Let's see. So I don't know how to do transitions. I think that should be like my famous thing. It's not only that I'm a Moonshot's biggest liar, but I'm also the worst at transitions.
Transitions are very hard.
Thank you again for sharing these with me. I'm definitely getting into the mindset now for Valentine's Day. Love and love for love's sake, and seeing our little fictional heroes go through very mundane, normal, in a superhero way, romance situations. Where can I find you on the internet if I want to keep asking for more of these beautiful couple recommendations?
Yeah, I'm kind of still on Twitter. My handle is Sleeper of the Bed, and if you follow me on, it's the same everywhere basically, and I don't try to change it anywhere. But if you follow me on Instagram, all you're going to see is just a bunch of writing. You're not going to see me talk about comics too much on there. But I tend to have spurts on Twitter where I'm like, I got to talk about this thing about comics.
Hell yeah.
I also do a movie podcast with a friend, and we have talked about those both Batman movies I have mentioned, and I gush about the romance in those too, called Freereeling It, like a movie reel.
Nice.
And yeah, we talk about movies. We do every 2 weeks. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds so much fun. Oh my goodness. And then of course in the Discord, we have the thread talking about all this, where all the screen grabs of the stuff we talked about, so you can come into this thread and ask questions and chat about the episode.
And I'll probably post different romances after this posts.
Yeah, all of the things. So you can find that Discord link in the show notes, as well as on Twitter, or just message or whatever. Get a hold of me and I'll get you in here, I promise. And it's my turn now for plugs, huh? You can find me on the internet at twitter.com/I appreciate your butt. But, there's the ever looming chance that Twitter may not exist anymore. So you could also find me on Tumblr at the same handle, but spelled differently. And so instead of IAPPRECI, the number 8 BUTT, or URBUTT, it's just I appreciate your butt spelled out correctly, which is hilarious. And then for the Hyperfixation, it's the Hyperfix Pod on both Twitter and Tumblr. And I couldn't have done this without Moonshot. So thank you to Moonshot. You can find them at Moonshot Pods on Twitter and Tumblr, or Moonshot Network on Twitch, where they stream all the time. And this episode has been edited by my lovely editor, Kingdom. So thank you, Kingdom. You can find him at twitter.com/Tachyon Kingdom. And the intro and outro music is Offuscate, OFUSKATE. And they're on Twitter, SoundCloud, and Instagram. I think that's all of the plugs I need to do. And you did your plugs, and the Discord's been plugged, and I am feeling emotions. So many emotions. Thank you again. This is so nice. You're definitely welcome back season 3, and we'll talk more about Batman. It'll be good, or whatever you want to talk about.
I'll find another avenue. Maybe I'll pick a Robin. We'll deep dive a Robin.
I honestly, when I was a kid, Robin was my favorite, so I'm down. I'm super down. All right, thank you. Be safe. Don't die. Drink your water. Take your vitamins. Kiss somebody, I guess, and be careful, but stand on a rooftop and profess your love. And have a nice day. Goodbye. Badoo.
Journey to distant realms. Explore the furthest reaches of the universe. Survive deadly dangers. experience matters of the heart, and more in a new actual play podcast. Join me, Audrey. That's right, just me, as I play tabletop games designed for one player. From journaling games to tarot games to even games that take me outside, I'm bringing you along for the ride. Join me for every episode of Alone at the Table,